County wheelage tax discussion.
Morning, Dietrich Flesch, Wabash County Engineer. Wheelage tax, if it were to be adopted by the county board, would be enacted for 2015. I believe it states incorrectly 2014 on the resolution.
Thank you for that, Clerk.
We, like Dietrich said, we had a public hearing in Millville in regards to this earlier in the year. And we had probably 15 or 20 in attendance, maybe. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, maybe 25.
And we took public comment at that time as well, so any public here that would like to speak to the issue? Any board members that would like to speak to the issue? Go ahead.
I guess I would like to see, as part of the resolution, that each year it be voted on. So often we find taxes are added and they never go away. So I think it's something that future boards should visit every year to decide if they want to continue the tax. Otherwise, it just becomes a permanent fixture in the county.
Well, having said that, then would you then support this resolution if we made that part of the resolution?
No, I do not support any higher taxation of Wabasha County. I guess, I campaigned on not raising taxes, and I'm gonna, my last 6 months, I'm gonna stick to that promise. So I'm not in support of this, but, I would offer that friendly amendment that you do revisit it every year.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I called a few people and I received a few calls about it this past week. A couple concerns that were expressed to me, and one that I have myself. The funds, I think that if this thing is enacted, that there should be a separate fund set up by the financial part of it, that the money goes into that fund and it can be designated only for specific uses, such as road maintenance. I believe that's covered in statute, but I don't believe that it should go into the engineer's general budget. That was one concern that I had myself and was also expressed to me. The other one is that it happened to come from some businessmen in town that said that the only way that they would even consider getting on board with it and supporting it, and ask me to do the same, was if it was absolutely used for road maintenance, period. Road maintenance, period. And,
meaning can
re-blacktopping,
okay.
class 5, whatever it needs. That it's not to buy a new road grader, or we're short of funds here and we're going to use it for spraying weeds in the ditch or whatever, on the backside of the ditch or whatever,
Well, I can assure you that was my hopes as well. And I also had calls from businessmen that they would prefer this over an increase in taxes if we were able to keep our levy down because of some of this, because this benefits the landowner, the taxpayer. It's equal. You use the road, you pay for the road. You don't own a car, you don't pay for it. Instead of the taxpayer, so the people that live in apartments that don't pay any property tax, there's a levy increase, they still don't get that necessarily passed on to them. So we've got to take the pressure off the landowner, the people who pay the lion's share of our taxes, and that's what this does. It's just more fair. And you're right, Deb. It is a tax, but it's a fair tax, in my opinion.
You asked Commissioner Roschen a question, which he supported if those conditions were in there. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Are you going to say that there will be no levy increase if you get it?
No, I didn't say that at all, because the previous board put this board in a very difficult situation.
You had 2 years to straighten that out,
Yeah.
Commissioner, and you didn't.
What are you
The previous
referring to?
levies. You had 2 years that you three were in control of the vote.
You
How
took the
so?
reserves.
You cut.
You didn't cut spending.
You cut
And I don't think the fire
revenues
board
by
did either.
7.5%
look,
2 years ago.
You gotta
3
cut
years
spending
ago.
too.
You went 0 the next year, which is exactly the same 7.5%. And I have no problem with you cutting revenue as long as you're able to cut 7.5% spending, and you did not. So now all of a sudden the reserves the piggy bank's empty, Dave, and you're now, we have to fix it because you two won't vote for, you'd rather us go bankrupt.
I'm gonna pick up on something that our interim administrator just said. Either or, you're gonna either pay for it on the front end or the back end, with wheelage tax on the front end or levy increase on the back end. So is it an either or situation, or is it gonna be a both?
Well, I don't know yet because we're just starting the budget process.
You know, then we gotta be careful what we say, because we're sending a message out to the people through this boardroom and through this streaming broadcast that it is either one way or the other. It can't be, is it gonna be both ways?
Well, I'm not sure that where you heard that.
I just heard it right here from our administrator.
It can be both.
He
I
didn't
said
say that though.
It can be both.
If we're just starting the budget process now, how do we know we need a wheelage tax?
Well, I think the board is well aware that last year we passed a 5% levy increase, and that still left a shortfall, and Ms. Koenig, you can correct me if I'm wrong, of approximately $800,000 to $900,000. This wheelage tax is looking at raising approximately $240,000. Those costs are still there. So regardless of if you're using the pass as any indicator, even with this tax, there's still probably going to be a shortfall. It all depends on how the board wants to handle that. In the past, the board has chosen to go into reserves to do that. I'm not sure if that's something that is long-term sustainable, but ultimately that's a decision that the board makes.
I would just like to make a clarifying statement. And I understand the temptation to blame others for everything. And, you know, we can go back, Commissioner Springer, and I could blame you for voting for the jail, which placed a huge debt burden on this county. I'm not going to do that because that's not good leadership.
You already
When I
did it,
took
Deb.
when
You
I
just
took
did it.
office, I have the floor. When I took office, I did that on a pledge to the people that I was not going to raise their taxes, because I believed there's better ways to skin this cat than to just say more money, more money. Now, you were deceitful when you said that we didn't do anything. That's not true. We offered an early retirement program, which saved us money.
How much? How much did it save?
I don't have it in front of me. But
Let me list the other one you're going to name.
I
You
have
didn't
the floor,
you didn't
Commissioner.
add the
I have the floor. Let me finish. So, we did an early retirement.
Let's move
Michael
on.
Plant was
We're not gonna
instrumental
go any
in that.
farther.
We also
we have a
offered,
motion and a second.
to hire
Any more
a
discussion?
coordinator versus an administrator.
All in favor signify with
And
aye.
so then that saved around $50,000. We also looked at cutting our own pay and our benefits. That's all been reinstated. We worked with other department heads to have them offer up ideas. We didn't get a lot of that, but we had our strategic planning and there was ideas we were looking at. There are still ideas we can look at. Unfortunately, this board does not do that and move forward. Our solution cannot always be raise taxes, raise taxes, raise taxes. The previous board looked at other options, and I listed a few. I can make a list, but I am sick and tired. I'm sorry I shouted, but I'm sick and tired of being interrupted when I'm in mid-sentence. That happened numerous times at the last meeting. I have an election certificate just like yours. Yours holds no more value than mine. I have an opportunity to speak. I have a right to speak, and I will be heard, Commissioner Springer. And so please do not be deceitful to the people and to your constituents, to my constituents, to say we didn't do anything but kick the can down the road. That is simply not true. And I will prepare a document, if you'd like, of the cost-saving measures we did implement. It was a work in progress. It's always a work in progress. And we were diligently working on that. So don't for God's sakes, be a leader and lead. Don't blame people.
Are you done?
I am done.
Because I would you like a copy of the letter to the Winona Daily News that says that essentially that year you budgeted that way, that it was a kicking the can down the road? It was in quotes. I can even provide that to you. Now you're saying that's...
We are not kicking the can down the road.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
The comments that you made about the cost of sand, salt, bituminous, you name it, equipment, repairs, that's that's things we can't do anything about. We can't. I mean, if you stop and think about it. They just keep escalating. We gotta come up with the money somewhere to do these roads. How do we make money?
Take less one instead of giving yourself a raise.
This
Well-
board's not had a raise since
It's been a long time.
2008.
We had one this year.
Well, you call it what you want, Dave. If you want to play those games, that's fine.
Well, it
Jerry?
is. We got $100.
Here again, though, Commissioner Harms, you know, that comment keeps getting brought up about cutting our pay. Have you returned any of your checks?
No.
To the county?
Have you returned any?
I have not, but I don't talk about cutting my pay.
You know, we tried, we're in this thing together. You know,
Jerry's-
Exactly.
Jerry's
you
got
know,
the
and
floor.
we did work it together
Jerry's
for a
got
year.
the floor. We don't need
All
any
right.
more screaming. Go ahead.
Not to belittle the value of $200,000, but Dietrich, I'm just kind of curious, how far does that go? Whether it's new blacktop, whether it's gravel, I mean, how far do you get with $200,000 on a road project? And then in response to Mike's comment he just made, maybe you want to copy that. Maybe some of you have seen this in various forms, but, you know, these are things, this is one area you could have looked at versus imposing a wheelage tax to come up with maybe some cost savings that could be redirected somewhere else. And the baseline numbers came from Deb Koenig about maybe within the last 90 days. So there are ways to finance and or at least come up with maybe cost savings somewhere else that could be redirected to projects or replace a wheelage tax.
That
Especially when it's only generating
that would I-
$200,000.
That I do agree with you, Jerry, because like your comment is, how far does 240,000 take us? It doesn't take us very far. And so we will need to look at those issues that you just brought up in addition to help fund this. This highway department has, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I am on the highway committee, but, you know, let's just say a very conservative estimate of $4 million in equipment, trucks, graders, you name it. Now, if you budget every 10 years to replace these pieces of equipment, we should be budgeting roughly $400,000 a year. And if you want to be conservative and take these pieces of equipment out to 20 years, we should be budgeting $200,000 a year. You know what this board's budgeted in the last 2 or 3 years per year? $500,000 or $50,000. We are now already behind the 8 ball with this equipment, and there will come a time where this board, if continuing down the same path, we will have to bond for equipment. And I came back on the board in '97. At that time, they had done just that. They had bonded for roads. They had bonded because nobody kept up with the times, and that's not good fiscal financial management. We have got to look this problem square in the eye, and we need to address it today. And we can keep limping this county along, Jerry, but we're not making progress.
So the other downside of this, and I think everybody knows, is townships get nothing out of this. It's strictly at the county level.
They have a budgeting process just like
Most
we
people,
do.
I think the problems they have with the roads are at the township level. You know, funding's tight there already. But I'm still curious, Dietrich, if you could, with the cost of, you know, the expenses that go into the material side, what does 200 grand get for us?
It's probably less than a mile of resurfacing a blacktop road.
What is a mile of blacktop cost nowadays?
It depends on the level of traffic, but we're probably somewhere around 250 to 275 just for the bituminous.
And Don, we'd like to see, as our commissioner in District 3, you know the status of Bryant's Bay Road and the improvements that are needed down there. We'd like to see blacktop for that 2-mile stretch and then up into East Bryant's Bay as well. Everybody's probably not on board with it, but, you know, the infrastructure down there in Ryan's Bay has not kept up with the demand and the development, okay? And nobody's really thought outside the box for the last 50 years. What are we gonna do in this expanding neighborhood down there? The traffic volumes on that road, I think define the necessity to do something with it. I know that's not the topic of this conversation, but if it's blacktop, we need to pay to get that done. We're gonna need to assess ourselves, pull that off, or assess ourselves in some part. Okay?
I was just gonna
To
say,
make
how
that
do you,
happen.
how do you propose that we
Well,
fund that?
And
And
that's
we've
what I'm
had
saying,
meetings with
we're putting money
Orange.
into everything else that maybe we don't really use that much, but we have some pretty big needs down there because of the population density.
Well, and there's other issues too with half
Plus
the
we
road,
have, yeah,
half the
we're aware
road
the
being
lid tax will be
owned.
coming up at some point, so, you know, it's another tax on top of everything else that is just coming down on it. But there are some fair infrastructure needs that we need to address within our communities that lie outside of the wheelage tax, okay, the funding that is available from the wheelage tax.
Any more discussion? All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Roll call. Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioner Wabi.
Aye.
Commissioner Springer's aye. Commissioner Roschen.
No.
Commissioner Harms.
Nay.